Chapter 15, The Gift Shop. It's raining by the time we reach the front gates and slip through the turnstiles with our employee passes. Normally, afternoon rain just means Fisher and I hang out in the treehouse behind the African grasslands. But today it means we have a crowd of zoo patrons filling the main gift shop, just when we were hoping for a chance to yank up a loose floorboard unnoticed. Fisher and I shove our way inside the double doors. The gift shop staff, with their bright turquoise shirts, skillfully herd rain-soaked people to various displays, trying to show kids the polished rocks, the animal figurines, and the wall of science experiments. I noticed that they try to steer the kids around the piles of plush animals. Rain-soaked kids with muddy shoes aren't a good combination for the white tiger and polar bear plush toys. There used to be a loose floorboard where they had the puppet stage, remember? Fisher points to the clothing racks that now occupy the old puppet show space. When we were much younger, Fisher and I used to sit and watch Isabella Costa, the gift shop manager, put on puppet shows for the kids featuring zoo animal puppets that spoke English and Spanish. Oh yeah, I wriggled between two enormous strollers taking up valuable real estate inside the crowded shop. The rain pattering on the roof and its steady tapping against the windows seems enough to keep all the people inside for a while. However, a small line has formed at the cash registers, and a few people have the yellow Lexington Zoo rain ponchos and umbrellas in their hands. Outside the gift shop windows, some people still walk the main path leading to the Wild Kingdom Education Center and Bear Country on the left and the African grasslands on the right. If more people would dare to get wet, Fisher and I would have more room to breathe. Lex, Fisher calls up to me from the floor. He's down on his knees, knocking on the floorboards beneath a rack of Lexington Zoo seasonal jackets. So far nobody's noticed, or if they have, they don't care. I dodge a couple girls looking at gold-dipped animal earrings and join them on the floor, careful to keep my feet out of the path of people. This actually works out better for us, he says, leaning in close and keeping his voice low. So long as the gift shop is full of people and the staff is busy selling rain ponchos, nobody's going to notice what we're doing. I hadn't thought of that. Without all these people around, Isabel and her sales clerks were sure to notice Fisher and me yanking up on a piece of wood on the wood floor. I kneel across from Fisher. The loose board, I remember, had a little notch on its edge, and it would make a wooden thunk whenever I stepped or sat on it. I think it was over here more, Fisher says, crawling behind a clothing rack. A pair of black tennis shoes stops right next to my hands, and I look up. A blond guy is looking down at me. He's wearing one of the bright turquoise shirts and a name tag that says Corey. You need some help? He asks. No, I stand up. Since he clearly doesn't recognize Fisher and me, he must be one of the new summer employees. I thought I dropped a quarter, but I can't find it. I found it, Lex, Fisher says a bit too loud. Several people in the store, including the helpful Corey, turn to look at him. You found my quarter? I say, giving him a wide-eyed look, hoping he'll play along. Yeah. I turn to Corey and smile. Well, I guess you found it. Fisher hands me something from the floor. It feels like one of the polished rocks from the big barrel. We're good, I say, waving my other hand at Corey. If he sees I'm holding a polished rock, he'll think that we're trying to steal. And then we'll have to explain that we live here and that we weren't stealing. And then Mr. and Mrs. Lee and Roger will have to come over and bail us out, and then we'll never hear the end of it. Corey nods. Okay, well, let me know if you need any help finding what you want. Right. Sure, thanks. It's so weird when the new employees think Fisher and I are visitors at the zoo. We know more about this place than almost anyone. And I could tell Corey where to find the secret stash of candy that Isabel keeps in the back storeroom. He walks away, looking for more people to help. When Corey is far enough away from us, I quickly slide the polished rock into the barrel and whisper to Fisher. Don't hand me store merchandise like it's my quarter from the floor. What if he saw it and thought we were trying to steal? We're acting suspicious enough already. Yeah, sorry. I just thought I better hand you something. Fisher taps his foot on the board where he stands and smiles. His tapping makes that familiar hollow thunk sound. My heart thunks in my chest along with it. All the times Fisher and I sat in here and laughed at Isabel's puppet shows, and all those times I noticed the hollow sound of this board, and there could have been a treasure under here all along. I nearly forget that the gift shop is packed with people. I almost don't care. Fisher and I are going to find Miss Amanda's missing treasure right now. Lexington Willow? Mrs. Lee hurries towards us from the other side of the gift shop, and Isabel is with her, pointing at Fisher and me. They're both holding their zoo radios, and Mrs. Lee doesn't take long to get through the crowd. She reaches us before Fisher and I have time to plan. Hi, Mrs. Lee, I say politely, trying to sound calm. I haven't done anything wrong, yet. It's not like Fisher and I pried up that floorboard, yet. Mrs. Lee looks relieved to see me, but the smile that she usually greets me with is missing. Where have you been? Well, I've been here. I walked Fisher to the bus, and I trail off because I'm not sure what I should say. There's plenty I probably shouldn't say with all these people here. A few nosy patrons are standing close enough to eavesdrop, and they pretend to look at t-shirt sizes. Roger asked me to help him find you, she says when I don't finish my sentence. He's been so worried. We radioed him to let him know you're safe, but I think you need to go to the station and talk to him yourself. Oh, this is about lunch at Wild Eats and that I didn't show up. With taking Fisher to see Miss Amanda's wrecked trailer and then searching for the lost board, I completely forgot. Am I in trouble? I didn't expect this. Fisher gets in trouble for not doing his chores sometimes, and he used to get in trouble for fighting mean kids when I went to school with him. But I never get in trouble. I'm a little confused. Well, that's between you and Roger, Mrs. Lee says. Come on, I'll drive you down there. She looks Fisher up and down. And he's filthy. Miss Lee raises an eyebrow and smiles a little. You look like you had a good practice. Fisher nods and gives me a look that says he's sorry that we can't look under the loose floorboard right now. And with nothing more that we can do, we follow Mrs. Lee past Isabel, who hands me a piece of candy like she always does and gives me an I'm sorry smile. Isabel has a good imagination, and I'll bet she can imagine what it's like to have people report on your whereabouts with radios. We follow Mrs. Lee through the crowd and into the rain, away from the loose board and Miss Amanda's lost treasure. I just hope somebody else hasn't already found it. Chapter 16, The Train Station. Fisher and I follow Mrs. Lee into the rain-soaked plaza, shielding our eyes from the slant of the rain. Mrs. Lee slides into the driver's seat of a large, covered golf cart parked outside the gift shop, and Fisher and I climb into the back. The zoo has several of these carts. The keepers use the small ones to speed around the zoo paths from one maintenance building to another. Mrs. Lee uses the larger ones like this, with the forward-facing back seats, to give tours to zoo donors. Frank Bixley uses the carts more than anyone, though. He doesn't really need to speed around to do his job, and I think he likes to feel important. Despite the small roof over the cart, the seats are wet. My shorts and t-shirt are instantly soaked. A light wind is slanting the downpour, but this still isn't one of those worrisome storms. The sky is just gray and not black. The air is only misty and not pre-tornado green. Mrs. Lee drives us down the hill to the left, toward bear country. Fisher leans over to me and whispers, "We can go to the gift shop tonight if you aren't in trouble." "Oh, I'm not in trouble," I say. I do feel an odd twinge inside that I don't recognize, but I think that's because today has been very weird. I saw an elephant's thoughts. I had a ghost's tea and biscuits for lunch. It makes sense that my stomach might be a little unsettled. "Well, I might be in trouble," Fisher says. "Who knows?" He doesn't look worried. He's just stating the facts. I'm not sure why, but it probably has to do with taking out some garbage. He rolls his eyes. His dad grew up on a ranch and gives Fisher chores to teach him to work. I giggle and quickly clap my hand over my mouth to silence it. The girl that we met early, Dolores, is now working at the hot dog stand in front of Bear Country. We wave at her as the golf cart zips past, and Dolores has a little hut with a decent roof to sit under, so she's sitting there reading a book as the rain pours down around her. She waves back. "I hope someone didn't already find Miss Amanda's treasure," I whisper. "The board is still loose after all these years, so that probably means no one has tried to fix it." "And if it's not there?" Fisher asks. "Well, we'll go back to Miss Amanda's trailer and hope that she shows up again." Fisher's eyes widen when I say the word Miss Amanda's trailer, and he puts a finger to his lips, even though I'm already whispering. "I hope I don't miss it if she does," he whispers, looking sideways at his mom in the front seat and shielding his mouth with his hand. "But don't tell my mom." I wasn't planning on telling Mrs. Lee. I remember a concerned look she gave to Roger when he mentioned the ghost once, like she thought he was crazy. "I won't," I say. We pass the Birds of Prey amphitheater on the right. The soggy seats are empty, but a few zoo patrons have clustered together underneath the small pavilion where people stand in line for tickets to the Birds of Prey show. Water runs in small streams off the banner at the entrance. One of the bird handlers, a guy named Javier, who wears khaki shorts even in winter, is covering some of the platforms and gathering wet props from the set. The path turns and we head north, parallel to Miss Amanda's woods. I stretch to see if I can make out part of her trailer beyond the boundary fence, but the ape house and the maintenance buildings mostly block my view. Whenever a space opens between the buildings just for a moment, all I see are tree branches blurred by slanting rain. "Why do you think no one ever cleaned up out there?" I ask Fisher, jerking my head toward Miss Amanda's woods and watching Miss Lee in the rearview mirror. Her lips are pressed together in a line, not really in an angry way, but more like she's trying to work something out. I don't think she can hear what we're saying in the back seat with the rain pelting overhead and the whir of the golf cart's motor. "Maybe nobody realized it's there," Fisher guesses, or maybe they just forgot about it. The weird twinge in my stomach twists a little tighter. Someone should have realized Miss Amanda's things were out there. She was a person with a life, and she died. And that matters. The things that she left behind matter. Her memory matters. I wonder, as I have a million times, what else happened that night that I came to the zoo. And then it hits me. "Fisher!" My enthusiastic whisper comes out as a hiss. "I have that old newspaper article from the Lexington Herald about the tornado, remember?" "Yeah?" Fisher wipes the rain spray off his face and shields his eyes towards me. The wind is blowing from his side of the cart now. He tucks his backpack on the other side of his legs, protecting it. "Well, the article said that several people died and some others were reported missing after the storm. I wonder if somebody reported about Miss Amanda." "You mean..." The idea spreads across her face. "Yeah, we could search for her name." "Well, you could see if anybody wrote anything about her and who she was." "It's perfect," I say. And I'm about to tell him Miss Amanda's last name again so he can help me search, but Mrs. Lee stops the cart and turns around. We're at the main station, as close as the golf cart can get to the train without driving across the long stretch of grass. Mrs. Lee's face glistens with rain, making her look even more radiant than usual. Her dark hair is sleek and shiny, and her skin is all one smooth color, unlike my own that gets more freckly with each summer day. Mrs. Lee reaches over the seat and settles her hand gently over mine. "You shouldn't do this kind of thing to Roger, Lexington," she says. "What kind of thing?" "You're very important to him. Do you know that, right?" I nod. "I hope the things I said to you this morning have nothing to do with you disappearing on Roger today." "What things?" "The assignment I gave you." "Oh," I say. "I don't want it to make things difficult between you and him." "Difficult? That's not a word I would ever choose to describe Roger, or me and Roger, or the things between me and Roger. Maybe that weird feeling in my stomach isn't from Miss Amanda's tea and biscuits. It's probably something else, but I'm not sure what to call it. It's not right, though. That assignment that I gave you is intended to help you grow. I intended for you to learn something new about yourself, as well as to more deeply evaluate the book that you read. Fisher squirms and shifts in the seat so he can look out the other side of the cart. He doesn't like listening to my school lessons. He says he gets enough of that when he's at school. But this time feels different. I get plenty of school lectures from Mrs. Lee, so this one shouldn't bother me. But it does, a little. You need to do this assignment and still respect what Roger asks you to do, she continues. Does that make sense? I swallow. Yes. Okay, Mrs. Lee smiles, and I'm going to want you to write something for me about what you discover about Karana and yourself. Now, I hope she's not about to give me a deadline, because I've been doing school assignments since last September, and this treasure of Miss Amanda's should get to come first. Mrs. Lee turns back around. Across the grass from our golf cart, engine 109 idles on the tracks. Pop-off valves by the whistle shoot clouds of creamy-looking steam into the air with a loud hiss, releasing the extra pressure from the boiler. The rhythmic clank of the steam-powered compressor sounds like the locomotive's metallic heartbeat. Roger's assistant engineer, J.P. Felt, looks out from inside the red and gold-painted cab. He sees me and waves his gloved hand out the window and then down the tracks at Roger, who is doing his pre-run inspection and hasn't noticed us yet. Thanks for the ride, I say to Mrs. Lee. And then, thinking that Fisher and I have some planning to do, I add, Can Fisher come on the train for a while? Mrs. Lee doesn't answer, but instead glances over at the train. Roger is now striding toward us with his long legs and his work boots. He waves his engineer's cap at us, not looking upset with me at all. I knew he wouldn't be mad about lunch. That's just not Roger. I think you need a little bit of time with Roger, Mrs. Lee says. But you and Roger are invited to our house for dinner tonight. Her voice lifts, almost like she's singing whenever she invites us to dinner. So you and Roger can make your plans, so you and Fisher can make your plans then. Fisher looks at me. How his mom always knows when we're up to something is a mystery. Luckily, she doesn't always know what we're up to. I step out of the cart just as Roger reaches us. Thanks for bringing her, Fern, Roger says. He puts his arm around my shoulders. It feels like it weighs more than me, even though he doesn't rest its full weight. Roger shovels coal, lifts heavy machinery, and he can fix nearly anything. His arm feels safe, but it's not enough to keep me from feeling that it might blow away sometimes. Even Roger's strong arms couldn't have kept my family on the ground in that tornado. Sometimes I wish he would have been there to try. Oh, it was no trouble, Mrs. Lee says, holding up her radio and waving it. The zoo staff radios are set to the same channel, so everyone hears all the messages. Heat spreads up in my cheeks when I think of Roger sending that message on the radio for everyone at the zoo to find me. You and Lexington are invited to dinner at our place, Mrs. Lee calls out happily. Come over any time after closing. Roger glances down at me and raises one bushy eyebrow. He's asking my opinion about dinner with the Lees. He knows I already spend a lot of time with Mrs. Lee and not as much as I would like with Fisher. I nod and smile. Dinner with the Lees is perfect, especially today when Fisher and I have work to do. Roger smiles. His eyes are kinder than most. We'll be there. I watch as Mrs. Lee drives Fisher away in the golf cart and then look up at Roger. The rain has streaked the coal dust on his face and has completely soaked us both. But a few minutes inside the steam engine's hot cab will dry us off. So, Roger says, drawing the word out long with the deep rumble of his voice. He takes his arm away from my shoulders and rubs his neck like he does when he's thinking. We slog through the wet grass toward the main station pavilion. So, what happened with lunch today? I'm not sure if now is the right moment to tell him that I met the ghost from the night of the storm. I want to tell him, but not here and out at the station, in the rain, after being brought here like a fugitive. Well, I went out of the zoo, into the woods. I lost track of time. Roger's eyebrows lift so high that his forehead wrinkles. I'm sorry. Are you angry? I have to ask because I've never seen Roger angry. I don't know what that would be like. I'm not angry, I'm just surprised. You went out of the zoo and into the woods? Didn't Fisher have baseball this morning? Yes, I went into the woods by myself. Roger presses his lips together, still rubbing his neck. We reach the pavilion. It's full of people waiting for the train's next run. A train ride is always a good option for the guests when it's raining. Roger walks around the side of the pavilion to the gate that leads to the tracks. He leans one arm against the metal railing and bends down at the waist, lowering his head a little closer to mine and keeping this conversation just between the two of us. I expected you were with Fisher, but when no one could find either of you for a while, I got worried. Why would Roger worry? I've been roaming free in this zoo for a long time. I know every inch of this place. I know where I'm allowed to go, and I never get lost. Roger rubs his hand over his hair and sighs. Suddenly I think of Roger, bent over his food, sitting all alone at a table for two at the Wild Eats Cafe. I think of him waiting his entire lunchtime, possibly not eating because he wants me to get there so we can eat together. I think of how he didn't know what happened to me and that I've never made him worry like that before. I put my hand on top of his where it rests on the gate holding his engineer's cap. I'm sorry I didn't come. I'm sorry I worried you. Roger gives a slight smile. I gave you a radio to use, and I know it's kind of bulky, but I do want you to take it with you when you go out for the day. You know where it is? Yes, it's in the treehouse on the charger. My radio is set to a different channel than the main zoo communication. It uses the same channel as the second radio Roger keeps with him on his train runs. Basically, it's just for us. And I think about that as I realize that I haven't really used it all that much. He stands up straight and places his engineer's cap on his head. So get it, keep it charged, and keep it with you, okay? Okay. Roger pats my hand gently. My hand nearly disappears under his. Then he steps into the pavilion and speaks to the people waiting on the benches. His deep voice carries easily across the crowd. The train will leave for another round of the zoo in 5 minutes. If you take a ride and want something to do to wait out the rain, we have a station stop just beyond the African grasslands at the Wild Kingdom Education Center. You can check out the displays in there, watch a movie about the zoo conservation programs, and stay dry. Roger knows everything there is to know about the steam train, about its history, about how to maintain it, about how to keep it running even though it's an antique. He also knows almost everything about the zoo's schedule and its activities. He makes sure that we mention those things in the train ride speech. But now I realize that Roger knows how to take care of people. I think people sense it because they like his ideas. Moms and dads with baby strollers, kids, older people. They get up from their seats after he finishes talking. Either they line up to show their tickets to J.P. Felt at the gate, or they buy tickets from the girl running the booth. Come on the run with me, Lexington, Roger says. Of course. I never get tired of the train. Hey, Roger, I say as I climb the metal steps into the cab. Yes? I'm sorry again that you waited for me and that I didn't come. Roger helps me up the last step. It's the tall one. The cab smells of grease and coal and hot metal. It's a good smell. Well, he tilts his head to the side and checks the gauges, monitoring the water level and the pressure. I suppose it was bound to happen at some point. What were you doing out in the woods? I don't mean to say it, but it's just me and Roger in the cab, and it bursts out of my mouth. I met the ghost that you told me about, Miss Amanda Holtz. Roger's coal-streaked face suddenly looks like it's made of clay that was left out in the sun.